The pen was already in my hand when my granddaughter walked through the door. She had not knocked. She never knocked. She had grown up running through that front door every Saturday morning, with her hair still tangled from sleep, and even now at 26, she still came in the same way. But this Saturday was different, because this Saturday she stopped dead in the doorway, stared at the man sitting across from me at my own kitchen table, and said in a voice I had never heard from her before, "Grandma, put the pen down." I looked at her. I looked at the man. He had kind eyes, and a very calm smile, and a leather briefcase he had placed neatly beside his chair. He had been in my home for 40 minutes. My son had called ahead to say he was coming, and that I should have a copy of my identification ready. I had my driver's license sitting on the table. I had a glass of water poured for the man, because that was how I was raised. His name was Gerald Fowler, and he had introduced himself as a notary. "Grandma," my granddaughter said again, walking slowly toward the table. "What are you signing?" I looked down at the papers in front of me. They were long, many pages, small print. My son had told me it was a simple update, a formality. He said that since my husband passed 2 years ago, certain documents needed to be revised to reflect my current situation. He said I should not worry about reading every line because that was what professionals were for. "It is a document revision," I said. "Your uncle explained it." My granddaughter looked at the man. She did not look unfriendly, but she did not look warm either. "May I see what she is signing?" The man smiled. "Of course. Though I should mention, we are on a bit of a schedule this morning." "A schedule," she repeated. She pulled a chair beside me and reached for the documents before I could say anything. I watched her eyes move across the pages. She was fast. She had worked at a law firm for 3 years, and she read legal language the way I used to read report cards, quickly and looking for the parts that mattered. Her face changed, not dramatically, not the way they show in movies where someone gasps and covers their mouth. Her jaw tightened just slightly. Her eyes went still. She turned to page 4, then to page 9, then back to the front. "Grandma," she said quietly, "do you know what this document is?" "A revision," I said again. Your uncle said, "This is not a revision." She set the papers down and turned to face me fully. "This is a new will. And in this version, the house goes entirely to Uncle Greg. Your investment account goes entirely to Uncle Greg. The charitable trust you set up with Grandpa is dissolved, and I am not mentioned anywhere." The kitchen felt very quiet. The man with the leather briefcase cleared his throat. "That is one interpretation. The language is standard. I went to Whitmore and Associates for 3 years, my granddaughter said without looking at him. "I know what standard language looks like. This is not that." She turned back to me. "Did you ask for these changes?" I sat with that question for a moment. My son had called me 3 weeks ago. He had been worried, he said. Worried about what happens after I am gone. He said the old will was written when things were different, when his father was alive, when the family situation was simpler. He said it was just good planning. He said he would have everything prepared and that I only needed to sign. I had not read the old will in years. My husband had handled those things. After he passed, I had felt so lost in paperwork that whenever my son offered to manage something, I had said yes. It was easier. He was practical where I was not. He understood finances where I did not. He had always been the responsible one. He said it was updating, I told her. Simplifying. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached over and covered my hand with hers. "Where is your copy of the original will?" "The filing cabinet." "In the study." She stood up and walked out of the kitchen, without another word to the man. The man looked at me and smiled again, but the warmth had left it. "Mrs. Coleman," he said gently, "these documents were prepared with your son's full guidance. He has your best interests. Please wait," I said. He waited. I waited. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the wall read 10:47 in the morning. My granddaughter came back with a folder. She opened it beside the new documents and read both at the same time, going back and forth. The man watched her. I watched her. Finally, she looked up. "In the original will," she said clearly, "the house goes to you and Uncle Greg equally. Your retirement account is divided 3 ways between your 2 children and the grandchildren's education fund. The charitable trust remains intact. Grandpa set that up specifically for the youth literacy program he cared about." She tapped the new document. "In this version, everything goes to one person. You lose control of everything the moment you sign, and there is a clause here that designates Uncle Greg as your sole financial and medical decision maker immediately, not after death." "Immediately," The word hung in the air. The man stood up. I think there may have been a miscommunication about the scope of these documents, he said smoothly. I will need to contact the client who arranged this appointment. The client, my granddaughter said. You mean her son? I mean the party who retained my services. He picked up his briefcase. Mrs. Coleman, I apologize for any confusion. We can reschedule when the family has aligned on the details. He left before I could say anything. The front door closed behind him, with a soft click that sounded much louder than it should have. My granddaughter sat back down across from me and looked at me carefully. She had her grandfather's eyes. I noticed that every time she got serious about something, Grandma, she said, I need you to tell me everything. Not the short version. Everything. So I did. I told her about the first call, 3 weeks ago, when my son explained that the estate planning was overdue. I told her about the second call, when he asked me to gather my financial statements and send photos of the account pages. I told her I had done that. I told her about the third call, last week, when he mentioned he had met with a financial advisor who had some excellent ideas about restructuring assets for tax purposes and that I should expect a visit from a notary soon. I told her I had not thought to ask questions. He was my son, he had a business, he understood these things. She listened to all of it without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Grandma, what is in those accounts right now? I told her. The life insurance from my husband had been substantial. The sale of the lake property we had owned together had added to it. Altogether, between the accounts, there was just over $750,000. The house itself, in this neighborhood, was worth another $400,000 at least. She closed her eyes briefly. And Greg has access to any of those accounts. He helps me check the statements, I said. I gave him the login information last year because I kept forgetting the password. He said it was easier if he just managed the technical side. She opened her eyes. Has he made any transfers? I did not know. I had not looked at the statements myself in several months. My son always summarized them for me. He would call and say everything looks fine, or the market is down a little, but that is normal. Do not worry. I had believed him. I had always believed him. My granddaughter picked up her phone. I am logging into your account, she said. Right now. Tell me the institution, I told her. She found it. She asked me the security questions, and I answered them, things only I would know, my mother's maiden name, the street I grew up on. The account opened. She went very still. Grandma, when did you last look at this yourself? February. Maybe. Your uncle called and said everything was fine. It is April. I know. There have been 4 transfers since February. She turned the phone toward me slowly, each one to an account I do not recognize. $40,000, $40,000, $35,000, $22,000. I looked at the numbers. They did not feel real. Numbers that large had never felt real to me, even when my husband had explained things. But the dates were real. February, March again, early April, $137,000. To where? I asked. My voice came out very even, calmer than I felt. The account name says GC Ventures LLC. She looked at me. Do you know what that is? I did not. She set the phone down and looked at the wall for a moment. I could see her thinking. She had always done that, gone quiet and very still when she was working something through. As a little girl, she used to do it with her math homework. The same face now that she wore then. Grandma, she said finally, I think we need to go to the bank today. I looked at the unsigned documents still sitting on my kitchen table. I thought about the notary with the leather briefcase and the calm smile. I thought about my son's voice on the phone, steady and certain, telling me it was all just planning, just simplifying things. He is my son, I said quietly. I know. She reached across the table again. And I am your granddaughter. And I am asking you to trust me for the next few hours. I looked at her for a long moment. She looked back at me without flinching. She was her grandfather's eyes and her grandmother's stubbornness, and she had not flinched from anything in her life as far as I had ever seen. Let me get my coat, I said. She drove. I sat in the passenger seat watching the familiar streets go by. My husband and I had lived in this town for 31 years. I had taught 4th grade at the elementary school, 4 blocks from our house for 22 of those years. I knew the names of every family on our street. I had never imagined sitting in a car heading to a bank to investigate my own son. My granddaughter called the branch as she drove. She explained the situation calmly and asked to speak directly with the branch manager, not a teller. When we arrived, a woman named Mrs. Park was waiting for us in a small office near the back. Mrs. Park had reading glasses on a chain around her neck and a very direct way of speaking that I found immediately reassuring. She pulled up my account on her screen and did not change her expression once, which told me she had done this before. She had seen this kind of thing before. "Mrs. Coleman," she said, "the transfers in question went to a business account registered under GC Ventures LLC. That business account was opened 8 months ago." She paused. "The signatory on that account is Gregory Coleman." Gregory, my son's full name. My granddaughter leaned forward. "Was there any authorization document on file to permit these transfers?" Mrs. Park clicked through something. "There is a document granting Gregory Coleman online access to the account for monitoring purposes." She read carefully. The access granted was view only. Transfers would require the account holder's direct authorization. My granddaughter sat back slowly. "He transferred funds using view-only access? That is what the authorization document specifies." Mrs. Park looked at me carefully. "Mrs. Coleman, I have to ask you directly. Did you authorize these 4 transfers?" "No," I said. The word came out steady and clear and surprised me with how certain it sounded. "Then what we are looking at," Mrs. Park said quietly, "is unauthorized account access and fund transfer. That is a serious matter." She paused again. "I also need to tell you something else. There is a pending document in our system, submitted 2 days ago, requesting a change of account ownership structure. If processed, it would move this account under a joint ownership with Gregory Coleman, giving him equal and independent withdrawal rights. 2 days ago, 2 days before the notary came to my house to have me sign a new will." My granddaughter said nothing for a moment. Then she said, "Please freeze the account pending investigation and reject that ownership change request." Mrs. Park nodded. "I will need Mrs. Coleman to formally request that." I straightened in my chair. "I formally request it," I said. After we left the bank, we sat in my granddaughter's car in the parking lot, and she called her supervisor at the law firm. "Not for official representation," she said, "just for guidance." I listened to her, explain the situation in the quick, precise language she had learned in those 3 years, and I felt something strange, something I had not felt in 2 years. I felt like I was not alone in the practical world, the world of documents and accounts and decisions that my husband had always handled and that I had been navigating badly ever since he left it. Her supervisor told her to document everything before contacting my son, photograph the unsigned will documents, get copies of the bank statements, write down the timeline of every call, every conversation, every interaction. We went back to my house and did all of that. It was almost 2 in the afternoon when my son called. My granddaughter was sitting beside me at the kitchen table when his name appeared on my phone. She looked at me. I looked at her. I answered and put it on speaker. "Mom." His voice was tight in a way he was trying to hide. "I heard you went to the bank today." "Yes," I said. A pause. "You should have called me first. There are things I can explain." "Explain now," my granddaughter said. A longer pause. "I did not know you were there, Caitlin." "I am here," she said. "Explain." His voice shifted. He had always been good at sounding reasonable. He was the kind of person who could make almost any situation sound like a logical step in a sensible plan. He had been that way since he was 15 years old. It was something I had always admired in him. "The business needed a bridge loan," he said. "The transfers were temporary. I was going to replace every dollar before the end of the quarter. The account restructuring was just to simplify things in case I needed to move faster." "Simplify," my granddaughter said. "And the new will?" A pause that lasted 1 second too long. "Estate planning. It makes sense for everything to flow through one person. Less legal complexity." "It makes sense for you," she said. "It does not make sense for her." "Caitlin, you are making this into something it is not." $137,000, she said. "Without her knowledge, without her consent. Is that something? Or is that nothing?" No answer. "Greg." I said his name and he went quiet immediately the way he had when he was small, and I used that particular tone. "How much does your business owe?" "Silence." "How much?" He exhaled. "It is complicated. Give me a number." Another exhale. "The bridge loans and the supplier debts are around $380,000. My granddaughter closed her eyes for just a moment. I kept mine open. "And you thought my money would cover that," I said. "I thought one good contract would cover everything." His voice broke slightly on the word, everything. I have a municipal bid pending. If it comes through, Mom, I swear, plus interest, I was protecting it, not taking it. I was going to tell you when it was resolved. When it was resolved, I repeated. I did not want you to worry. I thought about my husband. He had worried about everything and he had told me about all of it. Every mortgage anxiety, every slow year, every fear he had carried. He had shared the weight because he said that was what marriage was, shared weight. I had married a man who believed that. Somewhere I had raised a son who believed the opposite. The bid, my granddaughter said carefully. Who arranged that municipal bid? My son hesitated. I have an advisor. He has connections. His name. A pause. Frank Mercer. She looked at me and reached for her laptop. I want you to come here tomorrow morning, I said. With every document, every loan agreement, every contract, every communication with this advisor, everything. Mom. Tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock. The call ended. My granddaughter was already typing. I watched her face as she searched. The same stillness, the same patience. Then her expression changed in a way that made my stomach drop before she even spoke. Frank Mercer, she said quietly. He has a suspended license in 2 states. There are civil suits from 3 other clients, all small business owners, all with the same pattern. He connected them to municipal contract opportunities that never materialized. He charged consulting fees throughout, and in 2 of the cases, he advised the clients to move money through family accounts to improve their apparent liquidity for bid qualification. Move money through family accounts. He told your son to use your account, she said. Not because your son is a thief, because Frank Mercer told him it was standard practice. I sat with that for a moment. It did not make the transfers right. It did not make the unsigned will any less frightening, but it shifted something in the way I was seeing my son. Not a predator who had calculated every step. A frightened man who had trusted the wrong person and then been too proud to confess. That did not make it better, but it made it different. The next morning my son came alone, without his wife, which told me he had spent the night thinking. He sat at the same kitchen table where the notary had sat, and he put a folder of papers in front of himself, and he looked smaller than I had ever seen him. He was 51 years old, and he looked small. My granddaughter sat beside me. She did not speak for the first 10 minutes. She let him talk. He explained all of it. The business had been struggling for 2 years. The municipal bid was real, but the timeline Frank had promised kept shifting. The bridge loans had come with interest rates he had not fully understood. When the first supplier threatened to sue, Frank told him the fastest solution was to move funds through a family account, temporarily to demonstrate solvency for renegotiation. It was presented as a short-term accounting strategy. It was presented as something businesses did routinely. Did he know whose account he was directing you toward? My granddaughter asked. My son looked at the table. Yes. Did he know you had not told her? A pause. I told him she had agreed. I told him it was a family arrangement. She nodded, slowly. So he knew it was your mother's retirement funds, and he instructed you to move them anyway. My son looked at me. His face was the face of someone who has finally arrived at the place they were afraid to arrive, and found it exactly as bad as they feared. Mom, he said, I told myself it was temporary so many times that I stopped seeing what it actually was. What was it? I asked quietly. He looked down. I used your security to protect my pride. No one spoke for a moment. I thought about the 22 years I had spent in a classroom. Every fall a new set of small faces who did not yet know what they were capable of. Every spring the same faces, larger, carrying something they had built. I had spent my working life believing that people could grow if someone held the space for them honestly. But I had also spent 2 years watching a notary almost walk away with my husband's legacy. Here is what happens now, my granddaughter said. She pulled the folder toward her and opened it. We go through everything in here today, every loan agreement, every correspondence with Frank Mercer, every document he directed you to file. We build a complete record, then we consult an independent attorney, and we pursue a formal complaint against Mercer, with the licensing board, and potentially a civil suit. My son looked up. And the bank account? That stays frozen until an independent financial advisor reviews all transactions and confirms what belongs where. She looked at him directly. You will cooperate with that process fully. Yes, he said without hesitating. And the will documents. He pushed them across the table toward her. Destroy them. They were a mistake. She looked at me. I nodded. We spent 4 hours at that table. My granddaughter went through every page with the careful, steady attention she had always given to things that mattered. My son answered every question. He did not make excuses. He did not try to reframe. He sat there and answered. At one point I got up to make tea and stood at the kitchen counter while the kettle heated and looked out the window at the backyard. My husband had planted the oak tree in the far corner the year my son was born. It was enormous now. It had been enormous for years. I had stopped noticing it the way you stop noticing things that have always been there. I brought the tea back to the table. That afternoon, my granddaughter reached a senior attorney at her firm who agreed to take my case on a consultation basis. Within 3 days, the attorney sent formal letters to Frank Mercer, documenting the advisory misconduct pattern. Mercer's response came through his own attorney and contained a great deal of language about professional interpretation and client responsibility that my attorney described as what people say when they know they have no real defense. The civil process moved slowly, the way legal things always do. But it moved. The bank account was unfrozen 6 weeks later, after a full audit confirmed the unauthorized transfer amounts. My son signed a formal repayment agreement. It would take him years. He was restructuring the business debt honestly this time, without hidden strategies, without borrowed money he had not told anyone about. He called me every Sunday, not to report on finances, just to call. His wife called me once, early on. She said she had not known the extent of it. She said she had known money was tight, and had known my son was stressed, but had not known where the money was coming from. I did not know whether to believe her entirely. I believed her partially. Partial belief was what I had to work with. The new will was written properly, with an estate attorney I chose myself and my granddaughter, sitting beside me, as I read every line. The original distribution was restored. The charitable trust my husband had cared about was protected. I read every page before I signed anything. It took an hour and a half, and the attorney was patient and answered every question I asked. One evening, a few weeks after everything settled, my granddaughter came over for dinner. I made the chicken soup her grandfather had always requested, the one I had not made since he passed, because it had felt too large for one person. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and ate 2 bowls. "Grandma," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Yes." "When I walked in that morning and told you to put the pen down, were you glad I said it, or did it feel like I was overstepping?" I thought about the question honestly. "I was embarrassed at first," I said, "and then I was glad. And then later I was angry at myself for needing you to say it." She nodded. "You do not have to be angry at yourself." "I know. I'm working on that." She looked at her soup. "Grandpa always said you were the smartest person in any room. He said it all the time. He said you just did not always know what room you were in." I smiled at that. It sounded exactly like him. The way he had always delivered love wrapped in a little bit of honesty, just enough to land. "The room I was in," I said, "had a lot of people telling me to trust them and not read the fine print. That room exists in a lot of places for a lot of women my age." She looked up. "That is true. I did not walk into it because I was foolish. I walked into it because I was grieving and tired, and someone I loved told me not to worry." I picked up my spoon. "The difference matters. To me, it matters." She nodded slowly. "It matters to me too." We ate the rest of the soup while the evening came in through the kitchen window, and the oak tree in the backyard turned from green to the grey gold it became at dusk. I had made my husband promise me once that he would outlive that tree. He had laughed and said he would do his best. He had not managed it, but the tree was still there, and I was still here, and my granddaughter was across from me with soup on her chin, pretending she did not know it. I handed her a napkin. I thought about the notary with the leather briefcase, and the calm smile, and the pen already in my hand. I thought about how close that morning had come to going differently. 1 signature, 2 seconds, my husband's lifetime of careful saving folded quietly into someone else's failing plans. And then I thought about the sound of the front door opening without a knock, the way it always had. There are people in your life who walk through your door before you knew you needed them to. My granddaughter had always been that. I had known it when she was 6 years old, and climbed onto my lap and read to me from a picture book, slowly and seriously, as if the words were important. I had known it every year since. If you are listening to this, and something in your life does not feel right, some paper you were told not to read, some decision that was made for you while you were grieving or afraid, or just tired of being the one who asks questions, I want you to hear this. Asking questions is not weakness. Reading the fine print is not distrust. Saying wait before you sign is not ungrateful. Your name on a document is your life on a document. No one should be in a hurry to collect it, and if the people around you are in a hurry, that is exactly when you slow down. If this story stayed with you, please leave a comment below and subscribe to Amber's revenge story, because there are more stories like this one, and sometimes the most important thing is knowing you are not the only one sitting at that table.